When we graph 2 points and draw a line between them, that line has a certain angle to it, has a certain slope to it. And so what we're going to do is we can describe that angle, we can describe the slope with a fraction. So the top of the fraction is going to represent the vertical distance up and down, and the bottom of the fraction is going to represent the horizontal distance left to right. You can see the slope formula on the screen here. M is the variable that we use for slope. M stands for slope. So if we look at that fraction, you can see on the top of the fraction, there's y2 minus y1. On the bottom of the fraction, x2 minus x1. So when we're looking at our coordinate points, we pick one of the points to be x1, y1, and we pick the other point to be x2, y2. And then we can just plug them into that formula. Let's look at it on the graph first, though. So looking on the graph, if we look at y2 minus y1, so that's going to be 5 minus 3. Here's y2 and y1. On the graph, we have a y value of 5 right here, and then a y value of 3 right here. If we look at the difference between those, if we subtract them, we get 2. There's a distance of 2 between those two. So this distance 2, this is what we get when we do 5 minus 3. That's y2 minus y1. So that's why we subtract them. We're trying to find the difference between them. We're trying to find how much distance is between 5 and 3. We can do the same thing for the x values. So here's an x value of negative 4. Here's the x value of 2. If we want to find the distance between those numbers, we subtract. So we could do, say, 2 minus, I guess if I did 5 minus 3, I should do negative 4 minus 2. But in any case, you're going to get a distance of 6. Okay, so 6. And, well, I guess it should be negative 6, shouldn't it be? And we get that from doing negative 4 minus 2. Then we can make a fraction out of these, so put the rise over the run, so the up and down over the left to right. So we do 2 divided by negative 6. But we can reduce that fraction to 1/3, and so we get negative 1/3 for the slope. If we want to use the formula, we could just do 5 minus 3 on top, and negative 4 minus 2 on the bottom. 5 minus 3 is 2. Negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. We end up in the same place. We can reduce that again to negative 1/3. For the second point, I'm just going to use the formula. So we're going to do one y value, so say negative 5, minus the other y value, negative 2. Be very careful about your negatives here, so we do have to subtract a negative, since the negative 2 is a negative. Then we'll take the x value, negative 1 minus 6. Negative 5 minus negative 2 is the same thing as negative 5 plus 2, so we're going to end up with negative 3 on the top. Negative 1 minus 6 is negative 7. And now we end up with a negative divided by a negative, which is really just positive. So we have a positive 3/7. Now I want to do this the other way to show you that it doesn't matter which order you put the points into this formula. You can put them in either order. So you can switch around which one is x2 and x1, as long as you also switch around which one is y1 and y2. So if we say put the negative 2 first, then we'd have to subtract negative 5. And then if we put the 6 first, we'd have to subtract negative 1. Negative 2 minus negative 5 is the same thing as negative 2 plus 5. We end up with 3 on the top. 6 minus negative 1 is the same thing as 6 plus 1. We end up with 7. And just like in the other case, we get 3/7. So it doesn't matter which way you do it. Let's look at 2 more. So on the top, we have the point 2, 3, and then 2, 5. So you'll notice that this is going to make a vertical line. Let's look at what happens when we try to use the formula. So we'll do y2 minus y1, so we get 5 minus 3 on the top. Then we do x2 minus x1 on the bottom, so 2 minus 2. 5 minus 3 is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0, so we get 2 divided by 0. But remember that you can't divide by 0. Dividing by 0 breaks math. You can't do it. So we have to say that that is undefined. We don't have a way of describing what the slope would be if we're dividing by 0. So we have to say it's undefined. So what that means is we don't have a definition for dividing by 0. Let's look at the second set of points. So 6, negative 2, x value of 6, y value of negative 2, and then negative 3, negative 2. So you can see this one's going to be horizontal. If we plug those numbers into the formula, we'll get negative 2 minus negative 2 divided by negative 3 minus 6. On the top, negative 2 minus negative 2 is the same thing as negative 2 plus, negative 2 plus 2, which is going to be 0. And then on the bottom we get negative 9. Well, then 0 divided by anything is just 0. So a horizontal line has a slope of 0. Let's take these two functions, these two lines. Remember that this f with the parentheses x, that's function notation. So what this says is the f stands for function. It says we have a function that uses the variable x, and that's going to come after the equal sign. So let's compare these two. This is slope-intercept form, which you guys should be pretty familiar with at this point. So let's do minus 5 for the slope, for the intercept on the top. And then it has a slope of 2 over 1. So we're going to go up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1. And we can keep doing that if we want to make a straight line. Let's graph the second one. This one also has a slope of 2 over 1, but this one has a y-intercept of 3. So we'll plot the y-intercept first, then go up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1. Remember that if you're going up 2 and to the right 1, that's the exact same thing as going down 2 and to the left 1, so we can put a point right here. We could go down 2 and to the left 1 again. And you can see that this all makes the same line. It has the same slope, whether you go up 2 and to the right 1 or down 2 and to the left 1. It doesn't matter. So if we look at these two lines, you'll notice that they are parallel. So that's because of this right here. They have the same slope. The slope is 2 over 1 for both of those lines. So parallel lines have the exact same slope. Let's compare these two. The top one has a y-intercept of negative 5, and it has a slope of 3/4. Remember, slope is rise over run. So the top number tells you how far to go up or down. Bottom number tells you how far to go left or right. So the top number is 3. That means we go up 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1, 2, 3, 4. And then draw that line. For the second line, we have a y-intercept of 3 and a slope of negative 4/3. Now if you have the fraction negative 4/3 with a negative out front, that's the exact same thing as either having the negative on the top or having it on the bottom. It doesn't matter which way you do that. So if we go from that point, the y-intercept, we can either go down 4 and to the right 3, or we could go up 4 and to the left 3. It doesn't matter which one you do. I'm going to go down 4 and to the right 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Draw the line. And these two lines have slopes that make the lines perpendicular. So if you look at the angle at which these two lines meet, that is a right angle. So if you look at the fractions that we used for the slope, they're kind of similar. One is 3 divided by 4, and one of them is 4 divided by 3, but it's negative. So these are what's called opposite reciprocals. So reciprocal means you take a fraction and flip it over, so take the top and make it the bottom, take the bottom and make it the top. And the opposite means you make it either, if it's already positive, make it negative. If it's already negative, make it positive. So you flip the sign on it. So Opposite means flip the sign. Reciprocal means flip which one's on the top and bottom of the fraction. And if you have that case, you're always going to get perpendicular lines. So if we want another example, maybe if you have like -5/7 for your slope, the line that has a slope perpendicular to that would be the one that has the opposite reciprocal slope, which would have to be positive 7/5. So these two as well, those would be perpendicular lines. If you had two lines that had one of each had those slopes, then you would have perpendicular lines. To help you remember which slope is which, because it can be a little bit confusing, especially with the undefined being vertical and 0 being horizontal, there's this kind of creepy, weird picture of a guy. I call this Mr. Slope guy. So his eye on the left side, you can see, has a positive slope for his eyebrow, so his eye is positive. On the other side, we've got a negative sloped eyebrow, so his eye is negative. His nose is a vertical line with a U underneath it to tell you that vertical lines are undefined. And then his mouth is a horizontal line with these little dimples that are zeros that tell you that a horizontal line has a 0 slope. So that can help you remember which slope is which.